So let's give it a few minutes to get some people up in here. Let's see, what do we talk about? What did I do this weekend? I took the boys. Freddie had a birthday, so his birthday was actually about a week and a half ago, and he wanted to go to a place called Sky Zone. So if you're not familiar with Sky Zone, it's a trampoline park, and it's this huge like kind of trampoline park, and they got like you know climbing walls and you know, all kinds of like, just fun things for the kids to just run around and do. They had this pretty cool like balance beam where they try to knock each other off of it. And so, anyway, great time doing that, and then celebrated his birthday and coming back. Now, the funnest part about this was that I had 7 9-year-old boys for a 2.5 hour car ride. And I tell you, I forgot how rambunctious 6 7 boys can get, and holy moly, I am so glad I rented a vehicle to drive them up there and back, because they like slammed and smashed and did every compartment and seat and did everything to this car that they could. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I have to give it to Nissan Armada. They actually held it together pretty good for that whole trip, so thank you on that one. It's not a promotion or anything. I just actually thought it was pretty fun to drive that vehicle up there and back. So anyway, how many we got in here? Cool, 56. Let's talk about poverty. Had a buddy, not a buddy, he's probably a buddy. Anyway, had a viewer, there we go, email me a question. It was really simple, and it goes like this. I don't know if he really wants me to give out his whole name, but we'll just call him B. How about that? And so anyway, um, he has to define poverty. And it says, after listening to your YouTube today about addiction, I feel the need to ask you a question that I have been wondering. What is poverty, according to Cantillon? And I thought, wow, what a great question to ask. And this is a good one to discuss, too. So let's figure it out. So I went and got the essay out, and Cantillon, or at least in this essay, refers to poverty 5 times. The word poverty is mentioned 5 times in this essay. And so before we get into like what the essay says, the definition of poverty, when we looked it up on Google, says state of being extremely poor, the state of being inferior in quality or insufficient in amount, and then not having enough money to meet basic needs, including food, clothing, and shelter. And so now that was what we got from Google when I Googled it. So let's think about some of the things that Cantillon had to say about it, right? Because the first time he mentions poverty is in chapter 9. I left a link down in the description of this video to the essay, and this is on page 49, and it's chapter 9. The title of this chapter is "The Number of Laborers, Artisans, and Others Who Work in a State is Naturally Proportioned to the Demand for Them." Now, the first paragraph is where it's mentioned poverty, and it's, if all the farm laborers in a village raise several sons, oh, I forgot, I have glasses now, guys. Haha, there we go. Have several sons to the same work, there will be too many farm laborers to cultivate the land of the village, and the surplus adults will have to leave in order to seek a livelihood elsewhere, which they generally find in the cities. If some remain with their fathers, as they will not all find sufficient employment, they will live in great poverty and will not marry for lack of means to raise children. If they do marry, their children will soon die of starvation with their parents, as we see every day in France. Now, we do have to understand this was written like 200 years ago, so it wasn't like today's standards, that, we don't see people dying in the streets like we once did. However, we do see a lot of people living in mom's basement. That's what my wife said when she heard that. When I said, okay, well, this is what the paragraph, she goes, yeah, it sounds like a lot like living in mom's basement. And I thought, man, you're right about that. All these people don't really have anything to do, and even their means doesn't really provide for them. So I thought that was very interesting. As far as the first time he mentions poverty, is just the simple insufficient employment. And we talked about this just recently inside of our videos, where even the employment that a lot of people do have, like, we see in the Portland area, doesn't provide a decent way of living. Or like, even for myself, how like when in the middle of the pandemic and there was a housing shortage and there was no apartments to rent and there was nothing out there, I had to find a house to buy. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had like YouTube going on, there was no way I was going to ever be able to buy a house. So it was like, same thing kind of happened. It was just like, once you have there's no way of like being able to work and survive, then you're basically going into a point where you're going to go to starvation and stuff like that. And so you see the homeless rise, right? Okay. Moving on. The second time he mentions poverty, this is chapter 15, page 85. This is the increase and decrease of the number of people in a state chiefly depends on the taste, the fashions, and the ways of life of the property owners. Now, this is in the abstract written here for the paragraph, or for the chapter, and it goes like this. It goes, population is based on the taste and choices of property owners. Earlier versions of the Malthusian approach to population growth, that it follows some mathematical formula, are criticized. The chapter also shows that the opulence and lavish spending of the prince and absentee landlords living far from their lands was responsible for the poverty and declining population of France, which ultimately led to the French Revolution. Now, this is really kind of hard to wrap your head around when you think about like what it is that he's trying to say there, that that in this chapter, that it shows how the opulence and lavish spending of the prince and absentee landlords living far from their lands was responsible for the poverty. Okay, that part right there, it's the dive into luxuries from a far off land. And this is really difficult to wrap your head around, but I think once you start hearing the other chapters later on, it really starts making a lot more sense. So the third time that Cantillon mentions poverty, it's on page 150, and the title of this one was the increase and decrease of money, or I'm sorry, the increase and decrease of the quantity of money in a state. Now, this is probably this next 3 chapters, right? There's 2 sets here. I don't know if it was written in like 2 books or something, but anyway, this is chapter 6, even though it's farther into the essay, but it's on page 150 that he mentions it. But this chapter 6, the increase and decrease of quantity of money in a state, these next 3 chapters are probably some of the most profound chapters that you could ever read. If you're going to read this essay, or not going to read the entire essay, but only want to read a couple of chapters, read these 3 chapters, the increase and decrease of quantity of money in a state. Now, let me just read the paragraph here, because it goes like this. When the overabundance of money from the mines, well, let me just give you a little bit of, okay, so when he's talking about the increase of money, he was talking about it coming from a new discovery of like a mine. So here he has like, this particular area, and there's this mine that's just recently been discovered, or has been discovered in the past, and they've been pulling a lot of silver out of this mine, and that's the new money that's been flowing in. Okay, so when the overabundance of money from the mines has diminished in the number of inhabitants in the state accustomed those who remain to the excessive expenditures. Okay, so that's important to hear. When the overabundance of money from the mines has diminished in the number of inhabitants in a state accustomed those who remain to excessive expenditures, meaning that they're all used to like just spending their money spending money like crazy, raise the prices of farm products and wages for labor to high levels, and ruin the manufacturers of the state by purchases of foreign products by property owners and mine workers. The money produced by the mines will necessarily go abroad to pay for the imports. This will gradually impoverish the state and make it, in a way, dependent on the foreigners to whom it is obligated to send money every year as it is extracted from the mines. The great circulation of money, which was widespread in the beginning, ceases, poverty and misery follow, and the exploitation of the mine appears to be only advantageous to those employed in them and to the foreigners who profit thereby. Now that paragraph, guys, think about this. Let's replace the mine with the Federal Reserve and the banking system and all that. Now, if you think about like when the overabundance of money from the mine has diminished in the number of inhabitants in the state accustomed to accustomed those to remain to excessive expenditures. Now, when you grow accustomed to the excessive expenditures, this is where I like, once people have increased their standard of living, they cannot back away from that. And that's really where, I mean, I think this is probably one of the biggest downfalls of like just the human nature is that you always want bigger and more and increasing and all that. And that's when the excessive expenditures are out there. This raised the prices of farm products and the wages for labor to high levels and ruined the manufacturers of the state. It ruins the manufacturing. Think about the United States used to be the biggest manufacturer in the world. We produced more and sent it all over the world and got a ton of money coming in from that, right? But then of this, by the purchasing of, okay, so they ruined the manufacturing of the state by purchases of foreign products by the property owners and the mine workers. So those who had first access to the money were diving into luxuries, buying those foreign products, ruined the manufacturing of the United States, and now it's only advantageous to the mine or to the property owners and the mine workers, right? The money produced by the mines will necessarily go abroad to pay for the imports, right? All this money that we're buying from China and all the imports and all the other stuff, that money starts to leave. This will gradually impoverish the state and make it in a way dependent on the foreigners to whom it is obligated to send the money, right? Every year, as it is extracted from the mines. The great circulation of money, which was widespread in the beginning, ceases and poverty and misery follow. So once the game is over, think about it. Once the Treasury and the whole Federal Reserve System and all that is over, what happens? The great circulation of money and widespread in the beginning ceases and poverty and misery follow. The exploitation of the mine appears to only be advantageous to those employed in them and the foreigners who profit thereby. It's only advantageous to people who have first access to that money. Right? Everybody else suffers in poverty, essentially. So, well, not yet. I mean, they will be. I mean, right now they're just suffering in misery. I guess they haven't quite got to poverty yet, a lot of them. Okay. Okay, moving on to the fourth time that Cantillon mentions poverty, and this is on page 160. It's, here we go. All right, I'm going to read the whole thing. When a state has arrived at its highest point of wealth, and I always assume that the comparative wealth of a state consists mainly in their respective quantities of money, it will inevitably fall back into poverty by the ordinary course of things. The too great abundance of money, which gives power to states so long as it lasts, throws them imperceptibly, you know me with words, okay, but naturally into poverty. Thus, it would seem that when a state expands by trade and the abundance of money raises the price of land and labor, the prince or the legislator ought to withdraw money from circulation, keep it for emergencies, and try to slow down the circulation by every means, except compulsion in bad faith, to prevent the goods from becoming too expensive and avoid the drawbacks of luxury. Now, that's pretty important to kind of consider, right? Because here you got when a state has arrived at its highest point of wealth. Think about what's going on in the United States. And I always assume that a comparative wealth of the state consists mainly in the respective quantities of money. Who has the most money? All right. It will inevitably fall back into poverty. Inevitably fall back into poverty by the ordinary course of things. This is how it goes. See, this is why people should be very wary of a gold standard, because he's talking about a gold standard here. He's talking about money coming out of a silver mine, all right? So, I mean, but it doesn't matter if it's coming from a silver mine or not. Once the debt turns off, it's the same thing. It's like the mine shutting down or being depleted. Okay. By the natural course of things into poverty. Thus, it would seem that when a state expands by trade, the abundance of money raises the price of land and labor. Right? So thus it would seem that when a state expands by trade, think about it, the United States was the biggest, exporter in the world. We manufactured more stuff. They expanded by trade. And the abundance of money raises the price of land and labor, right? Expensive homes, expensive, wages or whatever people think out there. All right. Let's see here. Oh, land and labor. The prince or the legislator ought to withdraw money from circulation, keep it for emergencies, and try to slow down its circulation by every means, except the compulsion in bad faith, to prevent its goods from becoming too expensive and avoid the drawbacks of luxuries. But we know that they don't do that, because basically when the new money comes in, all the politicians love it. They go and tax the hell out of everybody, and what they're actually doing is just feeding off of the economic forces that are happening out there. Now, whether or not they actually make any good or right decisions is like never something that I've ever heard of a politician ever doing. So, but that's just my opinion. That's why I don't get into politics. Okay, but going on here. So that was the fourth time. The final time that he mentions, at least that I can find, in the Cantillon essay is on page 161. And this is a good one too, because it says this is talking about the abundance of money coming into this. How many people we got in here? 228. He meant hit the like button when you get in here, and I'll start answering questions and stuff like that. But let me read this last one, and then we'll start the discussion up, or we'll start talking. Jeez, I'm just like, I shouldn't drink the coffee. I'll start reading some of the comments. Okay, here we go. Few years are needed to raise an abundance to the highest point in a state, right, of the abundance of money. However, still fewer are needed to bring it into poverty for lack of commerce and manufacturing, right? For the lack of commerce and manufacturing. Now, if the United States back in the 50s and 60s was a manufacturing powerhouse and we lost that ability when we started exporting our manufacturing jobs because we were enjoying the luxuries due to the new money coming in from all that manufacturing that we had enjoyed. You see the cycle that happened? Like, it wasn't even like it was an inevitability that that's the way it was going to go down. So when everybody says, oh man, we have to, like, you know, give Nixon, like, you know, the big, you know, black eye for cutting us off of the gold standard, there was no other choice. We were about ready to export all our gold, right? And we were going to go into poverty. So we should actually thank Nixon for sending us on to this fiat currency, because we at least still have a hold of the gold, right? I mean, we can fight for that a little bit. I mean, because I think like this fiat currency isn't going to last very much longer, but who knows how far long it can go? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? All right, let's go back to the essay. Few years are needed to raise the abundance to the highest point in the state. However, still fewer are needed to bring it into poverty for lack of commerce and manufacturing. Without speaking of the rise and fall of Venice and the Republic of the Hanseatic cities, Flanders and Brabant. Gosh, I'm sorry, guys. I just butcher everything, don't I? The Dutch Republic, who have succeeded each other in profitable branches of trade. One may say that France's power has only been on the rise from 1646, when the factories were established to produce clothing which had previously been imported, to 1684, when a number of Protestant entrepreneurs and artisans were driven out of France. The kingdom has done nothing but recede since the last date. Okay, sorry guys, I have a hard time reading, and going through that much of it was quite a bit. But anyway, I think probably the biggest thing that I took from that, I mean, at least, you know, when I was reading some of the things that he was talking about when he mentions poverty, is when he talks about the manufacturing of a state and how the imports and the commerce, right, or the manufacturing, the commerce, and how the imports coming in will eventually drive out the new money as you export all your money out of there. Now, that's actually part of the system and how it's set up, considering that you have the U.S. treasuries as basically replacing the gold. Like, I mean, it's not gold, right? It's not even remotely close to being gold, but yet on this kind of global currency system, and even from Cantillon's perspective, if you were to take the U.S. treasuries as like gold and the dollars that go with it as basically just the currency that facilitates the trade from it, when you think about like how it is that the United States is not exporting gold to get the manufacturing, it's exporting debt, it's exporting those U.S. treasuries. And then in the meantime, we are importing all the stuff that we use to have a job, the commerce that we have here. So if China quits or exporting stuff to us, we don't have a job. And you think about what China is doing right now, they're slowing down on their manufacturing. So how long is it before we really start feeling the effects from that, right? Okay, let's read some comments here. Thank you for the $10. Let's see, where is that? What's going on here? I'm sure there's more comments than that. Where are they? Okay, there we go. All right, Nate B. The Chinese developers are basically the only people building in New York currently. I wonder where those dollars are coming from. Laugh out loud. Well, I mean, you think about like China. I mean, China is no fool when it comes to the dominance of the dollar. I mean, you think about how much dollar denominated debt that they have issued out there, to not like issued. They didn't issue out. I mean, they've issued out dollar denominated debt, right? These offshore bonds. So basically, when you think about like when China issues out a bond, typically they're due in yuan, but they can also issue those out in US dollars, right? The United States had done this exact same thing back in the late 70s with Jimmy Carter. They're called Carter bonds, right? And the Treasury could get the best interest rate by promising to pay back in German marks and Swiss francs. So, like even the United States has done this exact same thing where they issue out bonds in a foreign currency. Now, China had done something very clever, is that they went around the world doing this whole Belt and Road initiative, and they were like, oh yeah, you need a port, oh you need dams, oh you need a power power plant or whatever. Yeah, here, we'll loan you the money, we'll buy some bonds off of you, we'll do it in US dollars, right? So now these countries are due China in US dollars. Well, what are they doing with those US dollars, right? Well, they have to buy things just like everybody else, and they do world trade, and people think that the dollar is not like in demand. They're completely wrong. I mean, it's a narrative that has been spit out there through the mainstream media in such a way that it has people convinced that it is like right around the corner, this loss of like world reserve currency status. That is not happening. That is not like it's I don't even know how to explain how it's not happening, because like there is nothing else out there to say, okay, here's the second place runner up, right? Here's the second place runner up, and this is what it takes for the second place runner up to really start taking advantage of the fact that the dollar is the world reserve currency status, or king of the world reserve currencies or whatever. This is how it's going to start taking over. It doesn't exist. It is not there, right? And even with the idea that there's like all these central banks around the world who are loading up on gold because it's going to go back to a gold standard, that, I mean, yeah, it could. I mean, that it was there at one time, but we also have to understand, why is it that the gold standard failed to work in the first place? It's because of the exact same thing that the United States was going through when it lost its manufacturing, and then it started importing all the foreign goods and exporting all its money, its gold, and then eventually it fall into poverty, just like Cantillon is saying. So this is the problem with the whole system, is that the United States is now in a position in which that it just ever increasingly expands itself from, well, not even really expanded itself, separates itself with the ultra elite, right, who absorb all the money, I guess, and leave everybody else behind. Right? There's this huge inequality gap that takes place from it. And Cantillon describes that. I mean, it's like once you take the manufacturing jobs away, then you have the separation. The people who it's only advantageous for are the people who have access to the new money. So you can pretend to be like one of the people who have access to new money and take out a bunch of debt and become a slave, or you have the real access to the money where you borrow that and then you go and you buy an apartment complex and everybody's paying you rent, right? And it doesn't cost you anything. You just sit there and enjoy it. So this is the separation that's now taken place. And it's only going to grow worse so long as the dollar is king of the world reserve currencies, and I think that that's going to be taking place. I mean, for quite some time. I mean, not forever. It can't last forever, but who knows how long? 15 years, 20 years, 30 years? I mean, who's going to say? It's hard to imagine. But once you start seeing the second place, like runner up, then I think it will be quite obvious. And once it really starts to move, it's going to happen very quickly. I mean, it's going to happen in such a so quick that it's going to make their head spin on how fast it happens, that the dollar ends up this like failing as that world reserve currency status and getting replaced. But again, there's nothing there, right? I mean, at least we could discuss something that was the second place, but it's not there. All right, moving on. Oh, man, there were so many comments here. 92 likes. Go hit the like button, guys. Get some more people up in here. 244 of you. There's a bunch of you. It's cool if you don't hit the like button. Do what you want. All right. Will communism solve this? No. No, it's not, because it doesn't matter what form of political system you have. Will not matter, right? I mean, because it's the economic forces that are at play. The pain to the people, the what they experience, all kinds of stuff, the social environment, that might change. But the economic environment, the economic forces that are happening, that doesn't change, right? How industrious are the people? How well can they, sell their products out there? How well can they manufacture, grow, you know, how much food do they have? I mean, think about it. What's wealth? Wealth is food, conveniences, and pleasures of life, right? If you have all the food, conveniences, and pleasures of life, then you have wealth. Now, I think about like some of the homeless, like, because we're talking about poverty. Let's talk about poverty anyway, right? Because I think about some of the homeless that I see walking around, right? And a lot of times I see them with cell phones, I see them with beer, I see them with weed, right? I see them with stuff, right? And then I think, well, I mean, I haven't necessarily traveled a great deal outside of the country, but I've traveled some through Mexico and I've been to Jamaica, and I've seen the way like homeless and poverty live in other places, and it's not what I've seen, here in my local area. So it's quite relative, homeless and poverty in one area as opposed to another, because there's some places in this world where it's really, really bad. It ain't so bad when you compare it to people who have a cell phone and liquor, right? I mean, that's not even poverty, and to consider, in when you do it comparatively to some people. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going. Anyway, moving on. Ooh, the glasses. Yeah, I can't read. I can't see anymore, so I wear glasses now. All right, not really. I just kind of wear them sometimes. All right. Am I a povert? All right. Um, whatsoever you do for the last of my brethren, that you also for me. Let's move up here. All right. What does that say? Read about the IMF and how predatory those loans are. Now, I mean, I don't really need to read that stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of it. There's the thing. I don't need proof that there's a globalist, elitist, movement that is trying to control the behaviors and the functions and everything of the people. Like, I totally get that. Like, there is zero doubt in my mind that that is happening. There's zero doubt in my mind that they track, trace, and follow everything that you do with your cell phones and all that other stuff. Like, I don't know how it is to like explain to people that I am not going to live in fear, right? It doesn't fear me to have that going on, right? I don't like it. I try to communicate and, do things in a private fashion. I understand that when I'm using YouTube, I am using a platform that is I mean, they are gracious enough to allow me to be here. Thank you, YouTube, for giving me this opportunity to talk, right? Because if I didn't have this, I don't know what it is that I would be doing. So I thank YouTube quite a bit. But when it comes to my privacy and the messages that I want to send to my wife, I encrypt those. I have encrypted messaging services that I use. Now, whether or not that's secure enough to actually be encrypted, I don't know. But it's my private messages that I send, and I don't want that exposed to anybody else. Now, anything else that I search on YouTube, I'm using somebody else's articles or reading somebody else's, something they put out there, right? I mean, that's them for me, to use. It's not for me to be private about. I mean, it's just like if they, if they're providing it, then you have to understand that you're going to be exposed by looking at it. I mean, again, I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. Now what I do have a problem with is when it comes down to infringement on my rights, right? Now I do understand my rights, and I mean, I study the Constitution, and I studied it quite deeply for quite a while. And very few people that I know really have any idea of what the Constitution even says. I mean, there's only really a handful of things that you should read in the Constitution. Most of it is how government should be conducting themselves. It's really boring. But the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, I mean, That's something that you should, that if you don't know anything about the Constitution, memorize the first 10 amendments, right? Start with the first one, start with, just move on. And once you memorize the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, then start moving into some of the important things, like Article 1, Section 10. What, no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender and payment of debt. I mean, these things are written in the Constitution. Really, when it comes to the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, really, it's the Fourth Amendment that you should know by heart verbatim. Like, that is probably the most important right. It's the one that protects you from being searched. It's the one that protects your, everything about you, right? You don't have to answer questions. You don't have to do anything, right? The rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. Show me the warrant. And then look at the warrant and make sure that it's signed. If all those things, if you do all that stuff, you will protect yourself from all the crap that's out there, so long as we have a constitutional government, right? Or a constitution that the government is supposedly following, with a Supreme Court, and you understand your rights, and you know how to conduct yourself through society in that fashion, then you're going to do all the fear bull crap that's out there. It doesn't bother you, because it was just like, you know what? I'm going to stand at my door. I got a Constitution in one hand, right? Let's going to see what's happened, because I know my rights. I know them quite well. And there's other people who will try and intimidate me thinking that they know more than I do about my rights, and that's not going to happen. You're not going to do it, and that's all there is to it. I even know when I walk through my town that open carry of a loaded firearm is illegal, right? It's City Ordinance 5.010. The open carry of a loaded firearm is forbidden, right? And if you are open carrying, it has to be unloaded. And then if a law enforcement authority comes to you, they get to inspect it to make sure that it's not loaded. Now, you don't have to identify yourself. You don't have to tell them where you're going. You don't have to say anything else about it, right? You don't have to do any of those things except for those few, right? Prove that it's unloaded, right? I don't even know if that's really constitutional. I think you could get away with that too. But anyway, prove that it's unloaded, and that's it, right? And now you can carry as many firearms, open carry, as many as you want, right? Because there's no way that they can make a law that says that you can't carry a firearm, because that would be against the Constitution, and there's no law that can violate the Constitution. You have every right to do it. You don't have a right to carry a loaded firearm, but you do have a right to carry a firearm. And that's like, once you understand these things, like when I see people say, no, it's my right to not have to wear a mask when I'm in a store. No, it's not. You are standing on private property. Those people can tell you have to wear a hat, right? That is a private property. You're allowed to be there, right? It may not be comfortable. It may not be what you think is right, but it doesn't matter what you think if you're standing on private property. You're no longer standing on the street. Standing on the street, you get to do whatever you want. Well, not everything you want, not anything you want, but you understand. You don't have to wear a mask on the street. Even though they tried to make people do it, I don't know how that happened. Like, I would not wear a mask on the street, or anywhere else unless it was on private property and they made me do it. All right. All right. Thoughts on Gregory Mannarino? I haven't watched Gregory in a really long time, but I really liked Gregory Mannarino. I really did. There's some super chats up there I gotta go find. Let me go get them. All right. Where do they go? My phone is really acting funny here. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. James G. Thank you very much for the $5. Thanks. Here we go. Thoughts on the crypto crackdown, dudes? Do you look at investing in foreign currencies? Have you been overseas to see any different countries' economies? Yeah, like I said, I've been to Mexico. I haven't been to a lot of foreign countries. I've been to Mexico, Jamaica, and Canada. And this was before I was ever like into economics or anything like that. So it might have been influential to me, but it wasn't like something that I really like studied or looked at or anything like that. As far as investing in foreign currencies, no, not really. Not on any kind of like, investment kind of thing. No, I don't. But I do buy cryptocurrencies. I don't really necessarily consider it an investment, though. All right. Super Duty OHV. Let's see here. Do you think societal collapse is guaranteed if Cantillon effect goes into full effect, i.e., our government never stops printing more currency? Well, eventually, like, your credit worthiness fails, right? And that's really what I think the major thing that'll happen. But the credit worthiness is still intact, right? I mean, people still believe the U.S. Treasury is going to pay. Even through the debt ceiling, all that other stuff, people really, although there was a lot of concern for it, they really do feel that the U.S. Treasury is going to pay. So as long as foreign holding of U.S. Treasury still exists, then I don't really, I don't, I mean, so long as that happens, that's the word I think everything is going to continue. I mean, until that stops, right? That's when the credit worthiness is no longer there, and people think that we're close to that. But I've been hearing that since I studied economics, like started studying economics 15 years ago. I mean, if you had asked me like 10 years ago, how much longer does the dollar last? I'm like, man, it's almost over, right? But here it is, it keeps going along. Well, the more I study, the more I learn, the more I kind of figure things out, and the more I realize, it was just like, okay, since there is nothing that can replace the dollar, even come close to it, then, you're not going to be able to, really say that here it is, here's the second place. But is there going to be a societal collapse? Yeah, absolutely there will be, right? I mean, how do you transition? Like, okay, so let's think about how do you transition in a way that the dollar no longer is the world reserve currency. People are no longer buying the U.S. debt. And somehow we don't manufacture anything. So like, if you don't manufacture anything, what is it that you're going to provide for a service that can get you new money? Right, that can get you the money in. Like, this is, how do you do that? Like right now the United States is providing people with nothing, right, except for facilitating a trade, a lot of military defense to protect shipping channels. So there's like that service kind of thing going on there, but there's really not the manufacturing base to like basically support the luxurious life that we have, right? Because we've all enjoyed this higher expenditures. I don't know how to describe. I don't think there's any way that you can fix it. I mean, I guess really, if you started up like maybe if you started with easing up on EPA laws and you started allowing like mining and maybe some more agricultural things to start taking place where you can start tokenizing your commodities and doing it that way, then maybe you could. I don't know, because even your commodities would still just be too expensive. You wouldn't be able to export, and it would only be sold to yourself. There's no way. I just don't see any way of doing it. So there's total collapse. Did I miss another one? All right. How many is it? 281, right on. 150 likes. I dig it. Truly trying to learn to be more frugal, appreciating the small things is what I want to strive for. Absolutely. What the wildfire will piece of wood go up for? Oh, the wildfires? Yeah, that's pretty typical of, I mean, I don't know about how typical this one is, but wildfires are common. And what that does, and this is really strange for it because people think, oh man, this is going to cause prices to go way up. And it does. The only problem with it is that right now there's not a lot of demand for lumber, considering that the interest rates are high and the demand for house and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Okay, so the demand for lumber is low, right? And these wildfires start to take place. Well, then what ends up happening is once the fires are out, they go into salvage mode to try and claim as much of this wood as they can. And then all of a sudden they produce an overabundance of wood, and then it starts dropping in price. But during the time of the wildfires, you'll find prices move up because the availability of logging and doing all that other stuff, is not there because the wildfires are taking place. So during that gap in production, yeah, it does cause prices to spike. Excuse me. But in the end, it causes a salvage mode to take place, and they end up cutting more than what they typically would. Okay. Thank you very much, Jaws. It's good to see you up in here, man. $1.99. Thank you so much. We would all have to be farmers and warriors again. Well, yeah, really, you'd have to go back to self-sufficiency, like as much as you possibly can. And then, really also think about like, it's not just like living below your means, but actually just living to the absolute necessity of life, and that's it. And then taking everything else that you earn and reinvesting it into the future, right? Into whatever it is that you have going on. The moment that you start moving into luxuries, I want a bigger house, I want a nicer car, I want to go on vacations, I want two ribeyes. That is really where the problem starts to take place. And I know people are like, man, but I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor, right? I've worked very hard for this. I want to have the nicer things of life. Totally understandable. That's human nature. That's the problem, right? That is the exact problem that happens from it, right? And don't get me wrong, I want the brand new Camaro. They're not going to make them anymore. I better, like, they're going to make like, limited edition final year run, right? I mean, this is like, am I going to go get one? Probably not, because they're going to be hella expensive, right? But the fact is that I still want it, right? And that's the human nature within it, is to want these things because you always want more. And I mean, really what it comes down to is probably left over from the primordial state of like wanting food, right? As much food as you could get. Anyhow, that's really what the problem ends up being. All right, let's cruise back up here. The federal government, it has to go into one or two directions: infrastructure spending with living wages, or more prisons to shove workplace. It doesn't matter. The federal government can do whatever they want. I mean, yeah, they could probably mess with some of the symptoms and kind of make things appear to have changed and stuff, but there's no way that they can change course. That's not going to happen. I mean, they can make it appear and feel different, but it's still, this is the separation between the rich and the poor, and the eventual inevitable collapse due to the fact that the foreign imports will stop coming in, either due to currency crisis, meaning, or like debt defaults or something. But eventually, once the foreign imports stop coming in, we're done, right? Because we don't manufacture anything for ourselves, and we don't have anything to sell to ourselves. And so our commerce will end, and our imports will end, and the money will end, and all that other stuff will come to an end, right? And the only people who have any money is Lord Humongous, because he has all the gold. All right. Speaking of Lord Humongous, there he is. Hey, right on. There is no price discovery, hasn't been for decades. That's how the private central banks run their global fiat Ponzi scheme. You know? Yeah, right on. It's good to see you, man. All right. Let's see here. Interstate commerce will be critical in the years to come. Poverty is having no family. Poverty is having no family. Yeah, I could see that, I could see what you mean by that. All right, it's almost like if you don't live among the meek within the creation, you'll be part of the machine or the beast who traps those who build a world of false kingdom before Christ returns. Serfdom, I can see that. Do you know Yui wore? Did not know Yui wore glasses? I don't. I just started, so actually I've been wearing them at work to read, but I just noticed that I really do need glasses. So I mean, all right. Speak the truth. All right. It will never be over, people. Consumer people. Coon. All right. I just found your channel. Great stuff from Missouri. Well, thank you so much. The missing. My buddy just moved to Missouri. He actually got a really killer deal on a house over there. It was like $40,000 or something. Simon with glasses on kind of looks like Charlie Sheen. Oh, thanks. All right. I guess. I don't know. If you keep wearing those glasses, We're going to start calling you Professor Simon. Well, if I don't wear the glasses, I won't be able to read the comments. So, all right. That's why they call us consumers. That's right. UE, you should be very proud of what you have achieved. Thanks for sharing. Hey, well, thank you very much, Fast Sports. I mean, really, I think about like people are like, man, thank you so much. I've learned so much from your channel, but really, I mean, I've learned more from you, from the viewers, from the comments, from the people who have shared things, emailed me links and everything else. I mean, I've learned far more doing this channel, trying to create videos, and from doing this with you, than I have. I mean, than I'll ever teach you guys. I mean, that's like, I mean, if you go and watch every single video I've ever done, then maybe, but I've learned more from you than I could ever possibly teach. It's just like, it's amazing. I mean, in so many ways too, just beyond just economics. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Poverty is not leaving a tip for the waiters, so you can continue to invest all of your funds into dividend stocks and silver. Poverty is not leaving it. All right. I think poverty is not. Poverty is when you don't take the tip and invest it. All right? So, because really, you didn't even have to earn that money with the tax. Like, well, I guess if you're like a waitress and you have to claim your taxes, but most of the people who get tips, like cash tips, if you ever get cash, invest that, right? Because you didn't pay taxes to get it. I mean, I pay taxes on everything I get because I get looked at, but it's like, I think about it, it's just like, really, I was reading, okay, I don't know what my mind spins on stuff like this sometimes. It just starts clicking. Anyway, I remember reading, like, I think my wife was reading it to me, something about like millionaires and who got to millionaires. Most people who achieved the status of millionaire never made more than $100,000 a year. Like, that's something to think about. People who earn more than $100,000 a year weren't as likely to make $1 million or become millionaires as much as people who made less than $100,000 a year. Now, I think probably times have changed a little bit since that article was written, but still, I mean, even to think about that in any kind of way, it does make sense in the fact that people who earn a lot of money spend a lot of money, but people who have achieved a level of earning some decent money save a lot of money, right? And that's really what it comes down to. Is it doesn't really matter how much money you make. It's all about how much money you can save. Because if you earn $100,000 a year, but you spend 110, it doesn't matter. You're not saving anything. You're going into the hole. But if you can earn $60,000 a year and save 35 of it, I mean, that's like incredible. Like how much money you can save in a year, and it wouldn't take you no time at all if you invested it right to make $1 million. So, that's one of the reasons. Like I still drive old trucks and cars and stuff like that, is because I'd rather use that money for purposes other than traveling. I mean, I can make my travel expense very low, and then use the excess money, whatever that's supposed to mean, and invest that into the things that I feel are going to grow into the future. All right. Simon is the man. Yeah, you're welcome, you Lord Among Us, man. I always appreciate your comments and hard-headedness when it comes to being straight up in the gold and silver. I love it. All right. What shampoo do you use? I really don't know. I don't think I paid attention. I don't know. The stuff in the white bottle in the corner of the shower. I don't know. All right. What do you think about the upcoming copper shortage? Um, I've been thinking about the copper shortage for quite some time. I don't know about you, but I save all my copper pennies. And now it's really cool because I work a retail job. It's not cool that I work a retail job, but I work a retail job where I actually have access to a till, and I pull all the copper pennies out of it. I swap them out for the zinc pennies because, copper pennies are worth, what, 2.5 cents almost. So for every roll of pennies, you have like $1.50, of of copper. And I don't know, who's to say like someday in the future each one of those rolls ain't worth $5, or something like that. Um I mean, it could happen. So I don't know. Like, I can't predict like what it is that is going to take place, because anytime, see, this is the issue. Like, people say, man, there's going to be this oil shortage, there's going to be this copper shortage, there's going to be all these things that start to come up. And I think to myself, well, yeah, probably, but then necessity is the mother of invention, and we'll figure out another way. Like, people are like, there's no other way. Well, not right now, there isn't, because there's nothing you can foresee, but there's things that other people can, and other ideas that are coming up that will replace it. So, I mean, is it going to be a big deal? I imagine it will be. And I mean, I'm holding on to all the copper that I can find, so I mean, but then again, I hold on to coins like, I'm a coin collector. Uh, I'm surprised the dollar is still being used. I'm not. I am not surprised that the dollar is still being used. And the reason why I'm not surprised by it, because there's nothing else out there that can replace it. And when people were tricked essentially into using the dollar, because the dollar had, well, basically it was because, okay, so World War II, crazy things are going on in Europe. Everybody's sending all their gold over to the United States because that's the safest place to be, right? I mean, at least it's not going to Hitler, right? If it goes to the United States, the United States, oh yeah, hey, we can hold your gold. We're way over here, no problem here, and we'll just start using these dollars instead, right? Since we dominated the whole world and everything else, here, why don't we just start using these dollars and we'll start moving into that? Well, they knew right away that it wasn't going to work because, in the 30s, they confiscated all the gold. They were like, shit, man, we printed way too many dollars already. I mean, the Federal Reserve had only been in existence for what, like 20 something years? And then they're like, oh, crap, man, you guys really ran amok, didn't you? So they knew that they were going to have to cut the gold standard at some point in the future. I mean, it was like almost like they knew it, right? Because as the manufacturing base started increasing the luxuries, right? So at first, here, yeah, everything's cool, great new deal, everything's happening, manufacturing starts to kick in, and then the imports, right? Well, it starts with the manufacturing, the increase of new money coming into the state, and the lifting of luxuries. All right. So the higher standard of living. That's when people could have one job, household, kids, vacation, car, all the other stuff with one income, right? That was because of that manufacturing that was being exported, and that new money coming in, raising that standard of living. And that was the major problem with it all. I kind of lost my train of thought. Where were we going with that? Oh, and why it's still holding on, right? So, yeah, as the idea of the dollar being used, right, to purchase all the manufactured goods that were out there, eventually it got to the point where they knew that they had just printed way too much money, issuing out far too much debt, going into war and doing all that with Vietnam, which was just another excuse. But anyway, moving off from political, they just knew right then. It was just like, okay, crap, we are going to fail miserably if we stay on a gold standard. We are going to fail. So do the bait and switch. Just say a dollar today will buy a dollar tomorrow. Just lie, straight up lie about it. And that's what they did. And it worked. And now there's like, people look back and like, oh, crap, man, I can't believe we fell for that. But now what do we do? Right? And it was just like, so let's use something else. What? Right? Just use gold. Okay, are you going to pay the storage, the security, the transportation fees? I mean, is that you're going to pay that, or am I going to pay that? Because we're going to about ready to do this major deal, and I want the gold, but I don't want to pay for all those extra stuff. I just want the value of the gold, right? But there's storage fees and security and all the other stuff that goes with it that now creates a hassle for it. And then on top of it, if you're a major manufacturer and you're exporting all your stuff and you're bringing all the gold into your country, eventually you're going to start increasing your luxuries, and you're going to start falling into the same problems that the United States fell into. I mean, because it's just the economic forces at play. All right, I've been watching for so long, it was about time I hit the subscribe button. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, everybody should be hitting the subscribe button. I've never asked. Like, that's the thing. The one time I really brought up subscribers was just before I had hit 100,000, because I wanted to hit it on like the 4th of July or something like that. And it was like just a couple of days before. And so I had mentioned it, and boom, like it just like everybody wanted to hit the subscribe button and launch me over that. So, but I really honestly didn't want to ask for subscriptions, because I really wanted to feel like, I really wanted to know that this channel grew because people truly wanted to be here, right? And if I felt like if I asked for subscriptions, people might just hit the subscribe button, but not truly really want to be here. But if you hit the subscribe button all on your own without me asking, then it truly tells me that you wanted to be here and that the growth of this channel was truly natural. You know, I mean, at least I hope it is. I mean, that's what my idea was behind it all. And the same thing for likes. Like, I never really wanted to ask for a like on my videos, except for the live streams, because the algorithm will spread the video around and get more people into the live stream. But my regular videos, I truly wanted people to like the video if they really liked it, because it lets me know if I'm doing a good job or not. I mean, if people really like the video, I'll notice, and I will see, you know, I'll see more likes than when people don't like the videos. And it lets me know that I'm heading in the right direction. Well, if I asked for likes, then I wouldn't necessarily get a genuine response that I need in order to make sure that I'm doing appropriate videos, you know, or, you know, videos that you really want to see. All right. Defend real dollars. Lord, Lord, it's just the way it is, man. I mean, I'm not trying to, like, I mean, everybody should be using silver. Load up on silver. Everybody buy silver or gold. I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, it's just the way I see it. You know it is, bro. I mean, greed comes in somewhere it has to. All right, greed? It's not greed, man. It's just, okay. If you make $50,000 a year one year, and then next year you make $100,000 a year, would you not want to buy yourself a new car or a truck or something like that? I mean, would you not want to do that? Is that greedy? Is that really greed? I mean, because there's some people out there who goes, oh man, you got $50,000 more this year than last year. Why don't you donate some of that money, greedy bastard? Right? I mean, there's people out there who would say that. But it's not that greedy. $100,000 isn't that much. But to some people, $100,000 is like $1,000,000. It's like a lot of damn money. And, you know, for somebody who has absolutely nothing, anything out there that somebody has would be greedy for them. You know, it would be like they're a greedy person. You know, it's just, you know, you see them doing anything. Like, it was just like, what are you drinking? You know, are you drinking a $4 bottle of tea? You know, it was just like, you greedy bastard. You know, I mean, greed is what? A perception of it. Is somebody who makes $1,000,000 a month driving Lamborghinis, you know, or whatever, like, you know, is Andrew Tate, there you go, Tate, is he greedy because he's figured out how to get as much money as he does? And is it irresponsible for him to just absolutely just dump that money, just spend it like at will, just to get rid of as much as he can of it? I mean, why hold on to it, right? I mean, to get it out there, get the stuff, drive, you know, as many fancy sports cars, go as many places as you possibly can, do all the stuff. Is that greed, or is it just the capabilities that he's put himself into? I mean, greed is perception. And that's another thing. Like, greed is like an external thing. Like, I don't look at people like they're greedy. Like, there's some people out there who, like, you know, I mean, I guess they act in a greedy behavior or something like that, but I don't like look at people and go like, man, you're a greedy person or something. That's an external. It's like you have a problem with them and they need to be fixed or something, or they need to fix themselves. You know, that's their problem, their issues and all that. I don't have anything to do with any of that stuff, you know? And, you know, to think like, there's so much opportunity right now for people to do just about whatever, like do all kinds of things. Like, go be greedy, man. Go get the lion's share. Shit, you know? I mean, is pressure-treated lumber going up? Yeah, but not much. I mean, it goes up a little bit just because I think it's summertime and people are starting to build more decks and fences and stuff like that. But it's not like, you know, it's not like crazy, like going up like crazy amounts or something like that. I would not hesitate on getting your pressure treated lumber though. You know, this is as low as it's going to be, at least as far as I can see. I don't see any like prices going down. I only see the opportunity for prices to go up, but I don't see that happening quite yet. Like, I don't see the pressure of that happening, you know, but it will soon. All right. Silver was money before gold. The central bankers are hoarding the gold. Silver dollars are their killer. Yeah, you know, and I, you know, I agree. Like, you know, I mean, again, like, I'm a follower of the Constitution, right? Article 1, Section 10, you know, gold and silver should be the only thing coined as a legal tender and payment of debt. but I also understand the economic forces that come from being on a gold standard. So, I mean, I'm prepared for it. Like, I understand, I can see it. I'll be able to, like, follow my channel if we still have one going, and we'll be able to talk about it if we do happen to fall into a gold standard. But it doesn't matter if you fall into gold or Bitcoin or anything else. If you have a fixed amount of money out there and you have an industrious people, they will eventually start importing all the money, right? And that's just how it's going to go. They're going to raise their luxuries, start going to foreign ports, and blah, blah, blah. Did I miss a super chat somewhere? I don't know. Let's see. There it is. Super Duty. OHV. Does regular cab trucks work with one kid and wife? I don't know. I mean, this truck I use just for, whatever, throwing whatever I need in the back, just, grabbing some 2x4s or whatever. I have a few vehicles. We have 3 vehicles, so, No, a single cab truck, I mean, probably could work for a wife and kid, but, that's not a whole lot of room. All right. That's why you don't tell people how much money you have. Yeah. I'm glad I am a sub just to know where lumber prices is, but how it ties the way you explain it makes total sense. Yeah. Well, and you really have to be, it just goes to show like how inconsistent the mainstream media news really is. And like even like I myself, when I find articles that I talk about it, it was like, you have to take into consideration this is just a little tiny piece of information that these people are either blowing way out of proportion or whatever. So I like to take like the mainstream media articles and form an opinion on it from something else, like maybe, a Fed speech or something like that, to say, hey, this is correlating to my theories or not, or they're wrong according to my theories or something like that. But that's the mainstream media got the lumber thing so wrong. They got it so wrong. And that's why, like, I mean, not necessarily they got it wrong, but they misunderstood a lot of it. And like, you go and you find like people who talk about the housing boom or the COVID lockdowns or something like that, but very, 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 very few people will ever talk about all the inventory depletions and mill curtailments and shutdowns and all that other stuff that had happened back in 2019 prior to COVID. Like, I mean, it's documented here on my channel, so you just have to go back to 2019 and just about every week, I guess, I was probably putting out a lumber video talking about all this stuff. And especially towards the end of 2019, I mean, there was a video that I'd done talking about them pulling hundreds of billions of square feet of OSB off the market. They were shutting down a mill, and that was in November or something of 2019. So it was no surprise to me when all of a sudden everybody's screaming shortages. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was like they'd been doing inventory depletions and mill curtailments for a year. And people were, oh no, it was COVID that did it. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not even. Even the people I was working with, like the other salesmen and stuff like that, they didn't even see it. And I'm like, guys, I mean, I'm right here. I'm doing, we're like, I'm telling you, I'm talking to these mills, I'm talking to distributors out there. You guys are talking to them, and yet you're still like missing it. Because they all said the same thing. Well, it's greed and manipulation at this point. And I'm like, oh God, what are you all going to say when it goes back down to normal prices? And then now they don't know what to say about it, right? Because here it is, normal prices. All right. I have a 4CT bag. Okay. Do you remember this occurrence? He hasn't spent a ton of time with his son in the last few years, so it's good to hear that they are bonding again. They wanted me to let you know it wasn't personal. All right. Greed is needing luxuries, is it not? Is it needing luxuries? Greed is not, I mean, what is the difference between needing and wanting, right? I mean, there's a huge difference between that. I mean, a need is I need a car so I can get to work, right? So I need a car. Now, do I need a $100,000, brand new fancy pickup truck with all the crap and all the things on it? I mean, Is that what I need, or do I need $1,200 used S10 with 150,000 miles on it for the next couple of years till I can get something better? Which one do you need, right? Because you can easily get the luxurious item and meet your needs, or you can meet your needs with a piece of crap and people are not impressed with you by it, right? I mean, which one do you need? Do you need to be impressed or impressive, or do you need to get to work? I mean, that's the major difference on it. Like, this is a need for me to get to work, right? It's not something I want. I want the Camaro, right? But the Camaro is a luxury. So I don't want a luxury item because I need a vehicle to get to work. Needs and wants, right? Um, Essentially everyday black tea. Okay. Uh, is it considered greedy to not feed your children to invest double into dividend? Okay. You want greed? Look at the stock market. Why? Like, why would it be greedy to look at the stock market? I mean, these are companies that, are selling their stocks, or like, I could understand, like, maybe some of the rise of the zombie corporations, or some of the, like, the pump and dump stocks that people had done in the past. I could see, like, the greed in that kind of scenario, kind of thing going on. But, like, why would it be greedy to invest in, a particular company that you might believe in, like, you enjoy their product or whatever? So I don't think that's greed. Like, I think people who, I mean, not to accuse you of anything, but I think people who don't take advantage of it feel that they missed out and then blame it on greed. I think that happens. Yeah. The stock market itself, I don't think, is a greed thing. I think it's just an is thing. Yeah. All right. How I see greed is the way people choose to make money. There's so many sleazy hustlers out there, and that's beginning to become normalized. Having side gigs are great, but there's no reason to scam. No, you're right. I mean, there's no reason to scam anybody out of anything. Well, what is a side hustle? Like, I mean, how many hours in a day can you work? That's I guess, kind of one of the questions out there, is that some people are like, man, I don't want to work for my money. Like, I don't want to put time in. What I want to do is put something out there, an investment that starts making me money, starts generating me revenue. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, that's not a greedy thing to do. And having the capabilities and the awareness to do something like that, I don't think is something that you should look down upon. I mean, all that stuff, I think, is something that is very positive for anybody to do and should do. And by missing out on it, I can see where it feels like you feel lost, or you feel upset by it. Hell, I'm 46 years old. I barely have gotten started, right? So it's just like, I've finally gotten myself into a position in which, like, holy crap, look, I can actually invest. Hell, 6 years ago, I had a hell of a time trying to find the money to buy a gallon of milk. Right? I mean, so, like, to me, this is very confusing, and it's taken me a while to understand where it is that what's going on here. Even for myself, it's funny because I can look at the economy and explain things in a lot of fashions, but even for myself, as like somebody who wants to be an investor and an economist are not the same thing. Yeah, they look at the same things, they can talk about a lot of the same things, but they're not having the same mindset, right? Those are two very different things that are happening when you're an investor or you're an economist, right? So investors listen to an economist to figure out where it is that they want to put their investments. Economists are just trying to see the world the way it is, right? Trying to make predictions on what could possibly come from the cause and effects of things that are happening. Taking examples from the past to try and say, hey, these are the things that are, going to lead to the future. But as far as, like, an investment, do I invest in this particular company? I mean, hell, you got to be an investor to know that. You got to be able to look at the company and look at all the stats and say, yeah, this is a good company or not. I mean, how do you do that, right? I mean, that's like, you got to, that's where, like, investors go to. Stock market is nothing but a clown world show. I think not caring what others think of you is important to not get sucked into luxuries consumption mindset. Yeah, in a lot of ways that's true. Like, it's what people think of you is not really that important, so long as they think positively of you, right? because if they think negatively of you, it's going to be very difficult to function through society. Now, there's some people who are going to think negatively of you and whatever. I mean, but as far as generally going, for the most part, you want people to think fairly positively of you, right? I mean, there's lots of people, even on my channel here, who disagree with some of my views and some of my, theories and points and stuff like that. But they still like me, right? They're still like, I mean, Lord Humongous disagrees with me all the time, but he's my, I mean, we're like friends, I haven't met him personally yet, but, he's cool. So, I mean, that's the difference in it. All right. So, but yeah, you definitely have to care, like, what other people are thinking to a certain level, right? Not necessarily, like I need to change my behavior so that people like me. No, that's not the way it goes down. All right, Simon had a friend tell me, I don't know if I want to read this one out loud. Okay. There's 4 sovereign cities inside other countries. Huh? It's rigged against 99%. Yeah. Well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's rigged. It's just gotten to the point that if it's going to continue, it has to be that way, right? I'm not approving of it. Again, I'm not like, hey, this is the way it should be. I'm ready to like, hey, I'm with Lord. Let's go with Lord Humongous and let's go back to the gold standard. I'm ready. Let's do it. But most people are not prepared for anything like that, and they'd suffer in misery if we did. So, it's it's a matter of understanding that it's just like it's part of the system. It is rigged. It's freaking majorly rigged. That think about the mine owners in Cantillon, or the miners. The people who have first access to the money, the bankers, the people who borrow it. All those who borrow cheap debt and buy income producing assets. It's just like those are the people who are like in the rig, in the rigged system. All right. Well, what's up from Columbus, Georgia? What up? Midtown Columbus Incorporated. All right. The bond market is much larger and is falling apart. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got to see. It's like, as far as falling apart goes, I don't know. I mean, I guess time will tell on it. I don't know if it's necessarily getting to the point of falling apart. Definitely seeing interest rates rise, and you're seeing corporations starting to suffer under the weight of higher payments and debts. But I also believe that the Federal Reserve was anticipating this moment coming in to hack the heads off of zombies. I mean, in fact, I'm surprised that we don't see more bank failures and more corporations failing. Maybe that's to come, but I honestly think that the hunt is on. We missed the dice. I know. I'm sorry, guys. I have the dice over in the Toyota, so maybe I'll switch. I don't know why haven't I been? Oh, the Toyota. Yeah, it's because I forgot to register the Toyota, so I haven't had registration on it. I got it registered now, but I haven't for a while. So, all right. Sorry, my spelling was way off on my last comment. I work in IT, and I could explain why AI is not a good thing for the economy for days. I think AI is a wonderful thing. I think, to be honest, I am so looking forward to the day that I can just get in a car and it'll drive me somewhere. Like, I mean, I do. I really do look forward to those days. I'm looking forward to the conveniences that it all has to offer. Like, all that stuff. I am looking forward to it. And I'm not exactly excited about some of the scary things that can come from it, but I don't live in fear. So I'm not going to, right? And so I get to, like, as everybody else is scared of AI and what they can possibly do as far as, like, the scary Terminator type of stuff, or even just taking their job, something as simple as that. I'm not in fear of any of that stuff. If AI brings the conveniences to our life that we can go and just really pursue the things that we really wanted to do with ourselves, I think that's a good thing. I mean, why would you work when you can do something else you really want to do? Like, I'm kind of questioning that right now. Like, I mean, what is it that I do? Like, I mean, I work a retail job. Like, I enjoy working my retail job, but I could be doing something so much more, right? I mean, shouldn't I be pursuing YouTube and advancing myself that way? but yet I show up every day at this job, and I wonder why. Glasses look good. Yeah, just some cheap glasses that I picked up then. But thank you, I appreciate it. I can actually read with them on, so that's kind of nice instead of straining trying to figure out what the hell does I say. All right, thoughts on 401k? Do you have one at work? Yes, I do. I don't know about the 401k thing. The one thing that I like about it is that my boss, contributes to the 401k if I contribute, right? So it's like free money to me just to get into it. So um, I think retirement, or I think anything that has any kind of thing that you can put investment towards from a young age, right? Like I'm at 46, doing a 401k. Yeah, I mean, okay, cool, but like I'm not really counting on that. Like I really need to invest into myself and what it is that I could do to try and bring in as much revenue or money or business or doing whatever for myself, because like at this point investing into things that are going to grow enough in time to actually provide me with a decent life in the future, like a retirement or whatever, I don't have a whole lot of time, to get that. So I would have to work really hard to try and make something like that happen. And I think really investing back into myself, really is going to be my best chance that I have to really give myself the opportunity to have something major in my life, like that retirement, that real honest retirement. So, I mean, 401k, I think it's great, especially if you're young. Like, if you're just getting started out, absolutely. Especially if the company that you're working for contributes to it, load up, like match up as much as you possibly can and get in early, because the earlier, like compounding interest is by far the coolest thing that a young person has. I mean, straight up. Compounding interest at a young age is by far the coolest thing that you have as a young person. And those who miss out on that opportunity starting as early as possible, 18, 19 years old, the very first paycheck that you get, go down and start a Roth IRA. The very first one, right? Go down and start a Roth IRA. And don't spend your money, put as much money in as you can. And when you're 65 years old and I'm long gone, you're going to think the uneducated economist heads up and down and all over the place, that there was no better decision that you made than to start something like that, especially if you can get your company to contribute to it. Now, you have to be vigilant, when you do something like that, because stock markets fail and governments fail and currencies fail and all kinds of stuff like that fail. But the fact is that it's still going. It's still, is something that is a system that still exists. And if you know what you are doing and you can pay attention to it, you can really, set yourself up that you can you just contribute $50 a week or a month or whatever it is that you can afford into this thing, and you set it up where you have a returning compounding interest into it, and you can pretty much be a dumb shit your whole life, and make all kinds of crazy stupid mistakes, right? As long as you stick to that and you keep putting that money towards it, you're gonna at the end of it all, you're gonna be just fine. Right? And so again, like that's also being said that, hopefully the system will continue to last, right? So you have to be vigilant on that part of it. And I'm not an investor. I'm just saying that's just everything that I've seen, out there. Um, most 90% of millionaires, if I got the stat right, 90% of millionaires made their millions in real estate. You look well rested. What's up? Where are the dice? New car? Did I miss something? No, it's not a new car. The S10 is something I've had for a little over a year and a half or something like that. Paid $1,200 for it. It has 150,000 miles on it. It's a 2001. The rear view mirror fell off, and the dice are in the Toyota, and I'm not driving the Toyota because I forgot to register it, but it's registered now. So all caught up. All right. Cars are luxuries. Everywhere is in walking distance. No, it's not. Like my job from where I work or from where I live right now is 20 minutes on the highway, right? So I can't bike, I can't walk, I can't do any of that to get to work. Like, I mean, I would have to leave so early in the morning that, I mean, there would be nothing I would do except for traveling to work and trying to get home if I was to walk or ride a bike. Now, there is the possibility of carpooling. They just shut down the bus system, although I don't think the bus system was quite coming out this far. So, no, there's no way. I mean, I cannot possibly not have a car. Now, granted, I drive two really shitty cars, so I'm cussing a lot. I'm going to stop cussing. I drive two really ugly cars that are not the greatest condition, but they run okay. One, always have a backup, right? So if one fails, then I have another one. But I need vehicles to get around. I mean, I'm like fairly out in the middle, not out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I'm 20 minutes from town, but still, like, without a car would be very difficult, you know. All right, Simon, I invest in MO because of your recommendation. Well, okay. It's up to you, man. I mean, you invest on your own. I was just, people ask what I invest in, and I tell them that's what I invest in. And the only reason why I do invest in that particular company is because of Marlboro cigarettes and Anheuser-Busch, Juul. Like, it's about addiction, right? So, all right, Klaus Schwab will be eating the bugs by the end of this year. Well, I hope he enjoys them. You know, I mean, I hope he enjoys them bugs. Actually, I don't care what he does. He can do whatever he wants. He can eat the bugs or not. Somebody has to work. That's right. Somebody has to work. Somebody has to produce. And that's where it comes down to, is how industrious of a nation are you? I mean, our nation is incredibly industrious at one time, and we have, like, still a lot of features about us that are very good, but we don't export enough. And that's the problem with it, is we don't have enough exports to supply ourselves with the imports that we need to sustain ourselves. So if we had a balanced trade, like, you know, if you're balanced trade, export imported just exactly the same amount, then, and every single nation did that, then okay, maybe you could find some way to create this constant balance of trade throughout all the different, you know, nations out there. I mean, I don't know how that would happen, but I don't know. I mean, I guess if you could figure out a system that could occur, you know. Is stock market is corrupt to the bone. Great work, Rossi. Let's see here. Be Buffett minded. Blackpool trading synthetic shares and naked shares failed to deliver, and they get away with it. Hey, I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't manipulation within the system or corrupt. I mean, silver manipulation is something that I was studying quite a bit, and actually was very much on board with trying to crash JP Morgan by buying silver through their silver, you know, trying to crash them in their silver short positions. I mean, I was gung-ho with it, right? Max Kaiser, Giabo, global insurrection against banker occupation. I mean, I was following in on that stuff. I was definitely going to help them crash JP Morgan. I wanted to see silver go to $500 an ounce. Didn't happen, right? So I understand there's manipulation within the system. You know, it's just, there's no way of denying that. Thank God I'm stocked up on pork and beans. I love pork and beans, bro. Like, if that's like one thing, like, it was just like, what are you stocked up to prepare for the future? It would be like, man, I'm stocked up on pork and beans. I got it. You know, I'm good. Midtown Columbus Incorporated, there is no rear view mirror. That means no dice. I should go get the dice out of the car and put them on the dash or something. All right. Greed is putting profit before your morals and values, or is it mentality that put profits before other considerations? Okay. Is it wrong to go against human nature? Right? I mean, it's just the way it is, right? Is it wrong? Is it wrong to think that when you see a lion taking the lion's share, that there is something wrong with that lion? I mean, do you think that? Of course not, right? I mean, that's why they call it the lion's shares, because the lion's going to take it all. It's all mine. I mean, it doesn't even matter if he can eat it all. It's all it's all mine, right? It's because it's the mentality of survival. Survival of the fittest, the strongest. Now, I understand where, like, in your heart, it might feel like, no, we really need to take care of everybody. And that's true. You really should take care of everybody that's close to you, right? But not in a society that needs to take care of everybody, because not everybody needs to be taken care of, because not everybody is going to take care of themselves. So now you care for people who don't care about themselves, right? And see, that's the problem with the mentality like that. Take the lion's share and distribute it the way you feel is appropriate. Right? And don't get mad at other people. Don't get mad at that other lion for taking his lion's share and not sharing it. He doesn't want to. He's a lion. He doesn't want to share it. You're the one who wants to share it. But you should have the same mentality that you should take as much as he wants to take. Right? Because that's how it works. That's our human nature to do that. And to go against that means that you're going against everything that would give you the ability to actually acquire that kind of thing. That's the problem with having that mentality, you know? I've seen other people do it. They're like, "Oh man, I hate money. Money's terrible. If people really appreciated money, we could all share, we'd all live this happy life." No, that's a horrible way of thinking about it, right? I mean, you shouldn't hate money. You should love money. You should love the idea of getting as much money. You should think in your mind when you're before you go to bed that abundance of money flows to you on a daily basis. That's what you should think. And then all this abundance of money and all this lion's share that you get, you're going to be able to acquire all the things in life that you could ever possibly have wanted with it. Right? That's the mentality that you should have going into this thing. You know, because if you don't have that, you'll never achieve it. That's the problem with it is if you put yourself in a mindset that says, "Oh no, I'm going to limit myself on how much I can acquire," then guess what? What you'll acquire will be limited, for sure. You know. All right. Great generational wealth by leaving. Benny, you're like really just like every other comment, bro. All right. People gonna wake up one day and their pensions will be gone. What pensions? Yeah. Well, you know, how will the pensions really disappear? Like I really thought that it would start becoming more of an issue right now than we are seeing. So maybe I again, like, some of these things are really hard and difficult to wrap your head around to try and see, okay, like, is this going to cause a collapse, a failure, or what's going to come from it? Because really, I thought the pension funds would really start being, maybe they are, and I'm just not aware of it, but I thought that they were going to start getting hammered a lot more than they are right now, because there's something called collateralized loan obligations, and I don't know how many people are familiar with collateralized loan, collateralized loan obligations, CLOs, right? These CLOs are loans to companies who are in such bad credit that they can't even sell corporate bonds. They can't even sell junk bonds, right? That's how bad their credit rating is. And so they actually have to borrow money from banks in order to do their business. Now, these loans that they get from these banks, these are assets, right? It's a loan just like anything else, right? So the bank's asset is the loan. The liability is the money that they handed out to the business. So the bank's asset, this loan, to these bad businesses or whatever, these, you know, low credit rating businesses, they group those up like a mortgage-backed security would, like where they take a box and they throw a bunch of these loans into it. That's the collateralized loan, right? The collateralized loan obligation. They sell that off to investors. Now, what's funny about this is that everything that goes into this collateralized loan obligations is absolute crap. There's nothing good in it, not a single piece of it, right? But because of the way that it's structured, they cut it up in what they call tranches. And so now these tranches, they pay in different levels. So like the first tranche gets paid first. So as all these companies start to pay back their loans, obviously some of them are not going to pay, but for the most part, most of them are going to pay. The very first tranche, that very top tier, it gets paid first, and then down the line it goes. So this very first tranche inside of this collateralized loan obligation that is full of complete garbage has a AAA rating. Because all those companies are going to pay first, they can now sell this AAA rated investment to pension funds. You see what happened here? So here you got like crap businesses who have been given loans so they can collateralize it and then eventually tranche that stuff up, cut it up and tranche it, and or put it into different tranches, and so that they could sell that off to the pension funds. I thought that little issue was going to start like presenting itself in a major way. Well, I thought it could. I didn't know if it was going to or not. But I've been aware of that and watching for it, but I haven't heard or seen anything like that happen yet, as far as like pensions failing on account of that particular situation. Okay. SDRC, you know what unfunded liability they don't mention? I wish I was born in 1967. Maybe I was, if reincarnation is real. All markets are rigged. Good point, Yoakum. Okay, Simon, it's rigged, especially with JP playing the billion USD fine for rigging precious metals prices. Right. So it's the cost of doing business, right? No doubt about it. It's a rigged game. And the cost of doing business is the fines that they pay. Right, so they know they're rigging the system. They know they're going to get in trouble. They know what the fine's probably going to be, right? And so all that is the cost of doing business, considering that they have to manipulate, or they don't have to, but they're going to manipulate the game. And so it's like the fine doesn't discourage them, right? I mean, it's just part of the business, and that's what sucks about this, right? Because if they were going to go to jail, then it wouldn't happen, right? Then we wouldn't have a market manipulation game. So, but it's allowed to happen for fining purposes, I guess. I don't know. Simon, I appreciate you replying to every comment. Hey, well, I'm not getting every one of them, but I'm trying to get through them here. There's a super chat down there somewhere. Did I miss that? Where is it? Was that the one? Sorry, guys. I'm looking for that super chat here. I want to make sure I get all the super chats. PK Palms? Simon, I learned a lot from you. Question: is there any difference between American Gold Eagle and Canadian Maple Leaf? Gold Eagles are hard to buy here. At the end of the day, no, they're gold, right? So there's really no difference in them, but there is some difference in the sense that, I mean, I guess there is that kind of a thought out there when you have an American Silver Eagle or American Gold Eagle, that you actually have something that's legal tender within the United States. Now, with that being said, I guess that would make it different from a Gold Maple Leaf. And I guess there is maybe some advantages on it on a constitutional kind of thought, that here you have real money, gold and silver, as, payment of debt. I guess they're like, okay, how am I trying to say this? Somebody comes to you and says, hey man, I got something for sale for $25. And you're like, here, I'll buy it for $1. Right? Right? But it's a Silver Eagle. So do you pay taxes on $1 or $25? Now, technically, you're supposed to pay it on $25, but you legally bought it for $1 using legal tender, a Silver Eagle. All right? You see what's happened there? So that's like, is it a loophole? Is that, I mean, technically, it's not legal, because you're supposed to pay, taxes on $25 if you're selling it for $25, because really it's supposed to be a trade for silver. But really, it says $1 on it. It's legal tender, right? So why can't you sell it for $1, right? How about 1,000 of them for a car, $1,000 car? Do you pay taxes on $1,000 or 25,000? See where I'm kind of getting at? I don't think you can do that with gold maple leaves, because they're not legal tender in the United States, not like the Silver Eagle is, or the Gold Eagles. So that would be the only difference. Other than that, they're both gold and both silver. That's it. All right. Boom. All right. Gold and silver is the only money that can extinguish a debt. Yeah, and that's something to think about. Okay, that's exactly right. So how do you extinguish all the debts? You can't, right? And so even as you go to extinguish all the debts, what you're going to start doing is you're going to start removing dollars out of the system, because all dollars are based off of debt. So as you start to eliminate the treasuries, the mortgage-backed securities, all the debt-based, all the offshore debts and everything else that are out there, you're going to start eliminating the dollars that are within the system, and that's actually going to cause the dollar to grow and strengthen. At the very end of it all, when all the dollars are removed from the system, there's still going to be debts to pay. How do you pay it? Lord Humongous got the answer: gold and silver. You tell me, Adis, what if one were invested in dividend stocks for 15 to 20 years versus taking a chance with bonds? Stop thinking short term. The dividend account can surely add up over time. I mean, I'm into dividend paying stocks. Like, I would rather buy dividend paying stocks right now than just about anything. Like, I mean, it's, not necessarily picking the one that I'm talking about, but, just in general, that's the position that I would be going towards, and that's the feeling that I have. I mean, I look out there and I think about some of the conditions in which that this economy has, or especially the markets. The markets have been conditioned with the Fed speak. And this like we talked about this earlier today. That video that I had done, it wasn't very popular. It's only gotten like 1,000 or 2,000 views or something like that, where I was talking about an interview that was done with former Fed official Jeffrey Lacker. And in that interview, I mean, he spelled out the credible threats. Like he talked about it. It was just like, oh no, we can't. They wouldn't be able to raise rates because they haven't given the signal to raise rates. So I guess that they signaled. Like, he even talked about how the Wall Street Journal is the, like the presenter of information or whatever. So, like, you look for it in the Wall Street Journal. If the Wall Street Journal is talking about it, they're giving that forward guidance that it's going to happen and stuff. And he talked about it regularly in there. So when you hear the Federal Reserve talk about like a pausing of interest rates, what kind of impact does that have to the markets? The markets love it. They start rallying on this information, like, oh my gosh, the Fed's going to stop, like, restricting the economy. They're going to start, lowering interest rate at some point in the future, and that's going to be really good for the stocks. And everybody starts rallying in, wanting to get in early before this starts to happen. But then they hear, oh, well, no, they may end up just pause, but end up going like to 6% later. And all of a sudden the market's like, oh, wait a minute, we can't be rallying off of this information. They're just paused and not really doing it, but the Fed hasn't done nothing. Right? Just the information has the markets doing all this stuff. And even he was saying, like, they got to signal it, right? They got to make sure they don't shock the markets. So if they don't signal it, they can't do it. So they're going to signal it first before it all happens. That's why, like, even the whole idea of before they even raised rates, like, I mean, I was talking about this theory for a long time. I said, okay, so when the Federal Reserve goes to raise rates, right? And people said there's never going to be a time when the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates. You should go back and look at some of the comments that were in some of the videos that I was putting out. It was hilarious. People told me I was, called me all kinds of names and told me I knew nothing of the Fed or anything about Fed's policy or strategy or how the system works or how the government was going to fail as soon as interest rates went up. I heard all that stuff and I was just like, okay, whatever you all say, once the interest rates go back up or are elevated, we're going to see them lifted or raised for a significant amount of time after that. And the only thing that I really think I misjudged was how far that the Fed was able to get their Fed funds rate up to. I did not think that they were going to actually get them up to 5%, but here they are, right? I mean, but, again, they're not really at 5% on a restrictive basis because the Fed funds has a lag to it. So we're really at like 3% or something of around that. It depends on how far back you want to look at the lag. So really, we don't have an economy that's sitting at 5% on the Fed funds level. Even though the Fed funds says it, the lag has not achieved a 5% into the economy yet so that we actually feel the effects of it. That is still to be determined whether or not we're actually going to be able to achieve that sort of level, which would be like 6 months to a year from now, right? I mean, that's when we would start feeling the effects of a full 5% impact on the economy. And I mean, a lot of the economists are saying, okay, come 2024, that's really where everything is going to start switching. And even the Federal Reserve, or not the Federal Reserve, but the Treasury, even though this is not very well talked about, says that in 2024 that they plan on doing buying bonds back, doing bond buybacks, the Treasury, like literally taking cash and buying back bonds out of the market. I mean, they're going to be buying from the primary dealers, but still, it's, you know, adding liquidity to the bond market out there, which is removing the debt from the system. Now, again, this is something that people say, well, nope, it will never happen or whatever. I don't know. They already said it. I mean, they said that they were going to do this, and there's no reason why they won't, you know, go through with this. I mean, we're going to find out, especially if there's any kind of hiccup to any kind of idea that there's going to be a spot in the bond market that doesn't have liquidity or doesn't have a buyer to it. The Treasury will be right up in there going, nope, I'll take those, you know, boom, I'll take those off your hands. And that's what we're going to see coming. Now, what kind of economic environment is going to look like in order to have that sort of conditioning happening? I don't know what that environment's going to look like, but it's coming, right? I mean, so we're going to see the symptoms of it happening here as it starts to take place. All right, I'm going to do this for another 20 minutes, guys, and then I'm going to go in. Gold is gold, yeah. That and ammo, humungi. All right, you melted down. What do you have? Gold, yeah. On a large scale, true, Benny. What you think is debt is just I owe you nothings. One world government, slavery and dictatorship, universal basic income, earning potential suppressed. So you have to rest. Don't it muse sense? Don't it muse sense? Does it make sense? Maybe, I don't know. People call debt notes money in cash. Yeah, I mean, a Federal Reserve note. I mean, it's a note. What does a note mean? It means it's due back with interest, right? All right, the video is brought to you in part by Vortex Optics. Yeah, the sticker in the back. It's kind of cool. The people who recognize that, like most people wouldn't recognize it unless you really know what it is. All right, ammo is precious metals backed by powder. Everyone will get a monthly income. Simon, read about Exeter's pyramid. John Exeter was an American banker. Okay, John Exeter's it's actually, that's really cool because it's an inverted pyramid, Exeter's pyramid, and I can't remember the list if it goes down, but basically you can find it on the internet. And if you look at this inverted pyramid, it has all the, how do you call it? The like where wealth is and how it finally falls. Like if wealth was to leave like the like debt based or like all the bonds, like if all of a sudden the bonds were to collapse, where the money would go, like it would fall into like these different categories of where wealth is held until eventually it falls all the way down to gold. And it's something. Exeter was a Fed official, actually, if I remember right, who worked for the Fed, and he came up with this Exeter's pyramid that shows where wealth goes when, the deterioration of value from like things of like debt-based, like I said, like the bonds and stock market, and then eventually gets into like real estate and all this stuff, and still they eventually fall into gold, where gold is like the only value that you really have. And then I like, I'm not sure if I explained that exactly right, but it's kind of close. But I like when Chris Dewayne, when he did the Exeter's pyramid, because then he put silver at the very tip of this pyramid of how much there is to actually go around and being able to distribute an account or in regards to like how much gold there is out there. And it really shows how like silver is the ultimate tip of this pyramid, that it's really where wealth is constant or it's going to be had. Anyway, I know a little bit about Exeter's pyramid, bro. I study everything. I study everything. It's not everything that I truly grasp as far as like understanding, but I've seen so much stuff. Like I can't tell you exactly how the Bitcoin protocol mining operation works, but I can tell you that there's Bitcoin and there's miners and there's nodes and there's all the other stuff that kind of goes with it. But that's about it. And then what the economic impacts of having or at least my theories on what an economic impact of having smart contracts and stuff like that could do. But as far as like the details of how all that works, shit, I don't know. I have a cell phone and that's about it. All right. Yep, exactly, Simon. Pay yourself first. Each check, invest some of that into your dividend account. Pick individual dividend stocks or dividend ETFs. Very simple, and you can set up your children too. Yeah, I do, and that's the one thing that I really feel actually good about right now as far as like just moving into anything, like even gold and silver. I think there's buying opportunities coming. I think real estate has buying opportunities coming. I think that there's a lot of stocks out there that have buying opportunities coming. But I think if you were to get into dividend paying stocks, something that actually pays you to own it, no matter what it is, even if it's rental income, I think that's the position that you really want to be. Speculation into things that are going to go up in price, I wouldn't. I would kind of stay away from. I mean, me personally, I kind of stay away from those things unless you're looking for the insurance policy that comes from like holding gold and silver or Bitcoin on a lesser extent. Um, but unless you're looking for some kind of insurance on that, right now, I would be positioning myself in things that pay you rent. That's like whether it's, even if it's bonds. I mean, I guess Benny isn't into bonds. I don't know if he was or not, but it doesn't matter. Something that's paying you an interest on it. Now, when you go that route, you're lending your money out there, which means that you might not get it back, right? And when you're going to put money in a stock, you're investing in a company that might fail. When you go and you put your money into Bitcoin, you're going into something that has some wild, serious, wild speculations going on with it. When you put your money towards precious metals, you're owning a piece of metal. No third party claim. No worries. Right? You know exactly what you have, and you are the one who's in charge of it. You're the one who's going to protect. End of story. Right? So if you like sleeping at the end of the day, at night, right? You sleep a whole lot better when you sit on a pile of precious metals. All right. Okay. All right. I'm currently in high school and I want to learn advice from others rather than having to make mistakes on my own. What steps can I take at my age to prepare for the future apart from education? Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Gabriel, you have to make mistakes. It's the only way you're really going to learn. I mean, it's like, people say they don't want to make mistakes, but then if you don't make the mistakes, how are you gonna know to prevent the mistakes from ever taking place? You almost have to fail in order to achieve, and that's a sad thing to say to people because they don't want to fail. Like that puts them in a position of fear. Like I don't want to fail. I don't want to lose my money. I don't want to lose my opportunities or whatever that comes up. Right? I don't want to fail at this, but really, it's the attempt and then the failure to attempt is like the learning lesson. It was just like, why didn't I make it? It was just like, because you didn't work hard on this particular thing. So you work on that particular thing, you try again, you're able to achieve a little bit farther, then you fail again. Why? Because of this particular thing. So, okay, you work on that, right? And then you do it again and you set it all up and, you try again. And then this time you get a little bit further and you get a little bit further. And then pretty soon people are like, damn, dude, you're doing this really good. You're really good at this. It's just like, yeah, you just see how many times I fell down, tried to get across this thing. That's why you have to make mistakes. I mean, it's not like you have to make mistakes. It's just that you're going to. If you're gonna try, if you're gonna succeed, I remember like I remember a salesman. It was when I was working the yard at a lumber yard, and I was like still driving forklift, out there working the yard, loading up trucks and stuff like that. And I remember listening to a conversation of a salesman talking to a manager, and he's complaining about another salesman out there and about the mistakes that he has made. And he's showing him, look, he made this mistake and this mistake and this mistake, right? And finally the manager says, that guy does about 3 times more than anybody else in sales. He's going to make mistakes because he's doing so much more. Like if you don't do stuff, then you won't make mistakes. But if you're doing things, you're gonna eventually make mistakes, especially if you do a lot of stuff. So understanding that you're gonna make mistakes, like it's gonna happen, right? And yeah, it is best to learn from somebody else's mistakes so you don't do them. But again, if you're ever trying at anything, I mean, there's no way that you're going to succeed the first time. Like, I mean, you can. I mean, I shouldn't say there's no way. I mean, there's a way you can do it. But for the most part, people have to fail. You have to fail to figure out what it is that you're not doing right. And even if you have the best intentions on everything that you have going forward, it's still like you can't possibly see everything that could come, and you're not going to learn everything that you possibly need to know. I mean, some of the stuff you're going to have to figure out on your own. I mean, even doing this YouTube channel, it was like, I didn't know what it was that I needed to do to make it successful. Like, I didn't even know it was gonna, like, I had no idea that I was gonna have a successful YouTube channel when I started putting out videos. I just wanted to put out videos and have a conversation with people. And then pretty soon there was catching traction. I thought, man, it would be pretty cool to get paid, right? And then when I thought to get paid, I literally had a goal of $100. That's it. Like a $100, get paid once from Google, see what that's like, and that was it. That was my entire goal for earning money on YouTube. And once I achieved that goal, I was like, cool, I want to do that again, right? And there was mistakes that I made along the way, making videos, doing all kinds of stuff, had to learn to, from the audience what it is that they wanted to see and stuff like that. And along the way, building this thing up, is like I didn't really change a whole lot about the way the channel was operated, right? But there was a lot of learning processes that I had to go through in order to make it happen, and it wasn't things that I could ever have learned from watching other YouTubers. It was just things that I had to pick up by doing this. um, it's just the way it is. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like, that's part of fear, right? Like, is like making mistakes. I don't want to make a mistake. Well, that's a fear thing. Don't worry about making mistakes. You're gonna make it. Like, go out there and make a mistake, and then just try not to make a big major mistake or something. But it's gonna happen. All right. Dividend barrier to entry is much easier than real estate. Never heard of this pyramid before. Yeah, Exeter's pyramid. Yeah, check it out. There's all kinds of, it's basically, it's an image. It shows you, but it's good. Not into bonds, dividends, and silver. Yeah, I didn't think you were ready. Yeah, I mean, I have a treasury account, treasury direct account, but I really don't have a whole lot of bonds. All right. Will the banks benefit from a rate increase? Um, no. Yes. No. Right. And you got to think about like what it is that the question is trying to ask. Is it going to be good for their assets? No. But is it going to be good for their future loans? Yes. Right. They get to, get a better interest rate on their loans that they issue out there. But their assets that they already hold, when the yields go up, the price goes down, right? So if they're sitting on a bunch of bonds and the yields start to go up, the price that they can sell those bonds for falls. That's their assets. So they have assets and liabilities. So as the interest rates go up, their asset prices are falling, right? Which then offsets their liabilities to their assets, which is then part of their credit rating, meaning that it makes it very difficult for them to issue out loans and try to be profitable and all the other stuff that comes with it. Now, the bank can just sit on those assets until they eventually mature and pay them back the principal and the interest rates. But that's not the point. The point is that they can't sell those assets for right now and get them back for what they had basically had them listed at value at, right? Because as the price comes, like they had them valued at $100, but then when the interest rates go up, the price they can sell them for drops down to 98. Now their asset is less than what they, had it listed for, in sort of to understand that. And now their liabilities are more than their asset. That's the damaging that part that happens to them. So they could just sit there and wait for the asset to pay them back, but then they can't make out the loans or anything else. So it's making new loans and all that other stuff being profitable that way is no longer available to them. That's the major problem. All right. 8 more minutes, guys, and I'm going to head in. All right. Metals, alcohol, cigarettes, ammo will have bartering power. Yeah. Hey, they can George, but so does your real estate investment and hourly labor. Later, Lord. Is Lord out of here? All right. I'm going to 7-Eleven to put my money into a $79 hot dog. Later. Take care and God bless. God bless. Oh, Lord humongous. Glad you're here tonight, man. All right. My mistake was investing 50 BTC in what is that? ASO miner shares? I'm not sure. Learn from others' mistakes around you. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, I mean, you're gonna learn, like, you can learn a lot from other people, and I mean, that's actually how you learn everything. You learn everything from other people. You know, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the thing. Like, like if I was afraid to make a mistake out here on YouTube by something I said, then I would never put out videos. Like I mean, I make mistakes. I mean, just recently I've been saying that Janet Yellen said that we would never have another recession. That was wrong. She said we would never have another financial crisis. She never said anything about the recession. That was my mistake. I mean, I took a viewer to say, dude, you're saying that wrong. Stop saying it. And I'm like, oh shit, you're right. I'm saying that wrong. So I mean, people make mistakes. It happens all the time. Now, at the end of the day, I kind of relate a recession and a financial crisis is kind of almost because they seem to go hand in hand, but they are two very different things. They're not the same thing. All right. Which leads me to Monero. All right. Dividends afford you the simplicity and simple investing versus working additional labor hours. That is tax. So, what's a good dividend? What's a good dividend yield, and how much money should an individual have? Like, what size portfolio of dividend paying stocks should a person have? How about that, Benny? Can you answer that one? Like, what's a good dividend yield, and how much would a good portfolio be? Like, how big of an investment into a portfolio? I think that's a good question, right, guys? I mean, that's a good one. Okay. You did good. Let's see. Work for the government, you can fail up. Yeah. Good point, man. They always like to point out mistakes rather than the good stuff they do. Yeah. Question. Would you mind telling us how much is YouTube paying you now? I don't really like to talk about that because it's not like I don't really feel that it's appropriate to like to say the exact number and all that comes out. And it really is. It fluctuates a lot, so it's not a set amount that comes in, and it really depends a lot on views. It depends a lot on the ads that are taking place at the time. So like there's no, I mean, there is a rhyme and reason to it, but there's no real like way of like saying this is how much that each video would make if it got this many views, right? I can't really say it like that. So just to kind of give you an idea, over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years or whatever, there's been times that YouTube has achieved and sometimes has exceeded what I make at my day job, right? Not always does it do it, and sometimes it does quite a bit above, right? But it's like basically having a second job. Like that's about the easiest way to describe like what it pays. Not a great second job, just an average second job, right? And then there's also other ways that I could be making that I do and have made money outside of just the YouTube revenue. There's the sponsorships, which I know most people just absolutely hate, but hell, I'm doing it for my kids. With the YouTube, like I could do more to try and push, like say the merchandise, like pushing like the Teespring hoodies and hats and stuff like that. Um, there's things that I should be doing for you guys that would be better, like doing more membership things to try and bring in more revenue that way. So like doing stuff that's exclusively for the members. I've just been trying to even just stay on top of YouTube. It's hard enough to try and do like extra videos or something like that for the members only. And there's things like Patreon or other websites that I could go to try and generate some kind of revenue and traffic from that. So there's a lot of ways that I could be making money on through the Uneducated Economist type stuff. And then there's other people out there who come to me all the time and it's like, dude, you could be doing so much more. And they have like all these like really great ideas. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's way above like what I was thinking. There's people who talk about newsletters and different, stuff like that. And I'm thinking, and I'm just thinking, man, I'm just having a hell of a time just trying to stay up to date on like, just on the comments on YouTube. People were like, "How come you're not active on Twitter and all this other stuff?" I was like, I just simply can't be there all the time, to do it. I don't know. Does that answer the question? All right. All right. Learn to fix your mistakes. Yeah. There's an old saying that goes, "The revolution won't be televised." Yeah. Real estate or cash, gold, silver? Right now, I would be cash. Millionaires are sitting on cash getting ready. So, I mean, my personal opinion is I would be getting into cash um, on a short term, like on a very, very short term basis, like, the next 6 months or something like that. And in that case, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just put it into like short term treasury bonds or something like that? I personally I look forward to buying opportunities. And so not having a whole lot of money anyway, what I've decided to do instead of like sitting on cash or failure to invest is I just started paying forward on my mortgage. So now I'm, well, not a few months, but I'm a little ways ahead on my mortgage payments. And the way I see about that is that will give me access to cash right away. Like I won't have to make a mortgage payment of a certain month if I don't need to, and then that'll give me fast access to cash. Um, in that sense that I have, income revenue coming in and stuff like that. So that's kind of like my game, is that I would love to be like, ultimately, I'd love to have my house payments about a year ahead, so that if anything was to happen, I don't have to make a house payment for an entire 12 months. To me, that would be an awesome cushion to have. And then in that sense, anything that ever came up with a buying opportunity or chance or whatever you needed, you have like you're nimble, you know what I'm saying? You can do things right then. So anyway, that's how I'm kind of going. I would love to hang out here, guys, and just talk all night, but I'm gonna go in because we've been out here for 2 hours. It's been a wonderful time. Benny, thank you so much. Did we get the question answered? Okay, here we go. Yield between three and I wanted to make sure we got Benny's question, got his answer from the question. He says yield between 3.5% dividend, portfolio size between 10 to 15% out of each paycheck. It's all relative after that point. Okay. So, right, 10 to 15% into a 3 to 5% dividend paying portfolio, or dividend paying stocks into your portfolio. That's what Benny is suggesting. And that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, totally sounds reasonable to me. All right, Benny, no need to be afraid of the dividend armchair preacher. Best way to pay yourself. Couldn't you just save the money? Save the money instead of paying ahead. Well, you could. I mean, I could save the money, and that's very true. And I mean, I have done that, right? I thought, okay, well, you can invest the money because really you're not gaining anything by paying ahead. Like, like even if you were to pay the principal on it, then at least you wouldn't have to pay the 3% interest on that principal payment, right? But to me, again, like I'm thinking, I want to be nimble. Like I want to be able to position myself or to do things without having the restriction of having another payment coming. You see, that's the only, like, I know it's very backwards thinking from what a lot of people would do, but to me, it makes a lot of sense that if I have a 12-month cushion, anything that happens within 12 months, I don't have to worry about that, right? That's one thing that is not on my mind. So to me, it's about an ease of position and not only mindset, but then also that gives me the ability that my revenue that is coming in during that 12 months that I decide that I don't want to make payments, I can do whatever it is that I want with that money, whether it's invested or, take care of medical bills, take care of like whatever issues happen to come up. And to me, that's like, that's worth it. Now whether or not that's a sound investment, I don't know if it's necessarily a good or wise investment choice, but a personal like feeling of being positioned in a way that I don't feel obligated, or I don't wouldn't have to be obligated for 12 months, that's a really good position for me, at least just for my mental being. All right. Uneducated Economist, thank you all so much for being here. We had 169 of you make it through to the very end, 247 thumbs up. I saw close to 300 people at one point. Got $32.69 in super chats. You guys are always so very generous with the super chats. I thank you so much for that. Thank you all for being here, and look for the links down in the description. Uneducated Economist. You let me know.